Good evening, everybody. How are we all doing today? I hope we all are well. Today, we are going to be looking at the Opobo people. Today, we are going to be looking at the history of Opobo, and this is going to be a first video in a series of videos that will be made about Opobo. We are going to look at their history from the earliest point of, the establishment of Opobo down to their identity today. The Opobo people, without any doubt, are actually Igbo people, and they are part of the Igbo nation. And so it is important that we look into their history in trying to understand how things have been for them from the beginning down to this moment. Now, the first thing we're going to be looking into is how Opobo left Bonny. Now, for those who do not know, Opobo used to be part of the community known as Bonny. We've made a lot of videos and expositions about how things are in Bonny, about their identity as Igbo people. However, Opobo used to be part of Bonny at one point in time. They were all Ubani people. The name known as Bonny today is from Ubani. Ubani. Now, along the way, there was crisis. There was crisis in Bonny. In fact, in Bonny's history, there have been so much crisis that is unbelievable. And it's not surprising actually, because in most Igbo communities, both intercommunal and intra-communal crises were rife. In the olden days, they were very, very commonplace. You see, and so Bonny is not an exception. Bonny had so much crisis, from kinship tussles to, unnecessary murders, to intra-fighting, to even intercommunal crisis with the Calabar people. So much crisis in the olden days. It is too much, you can't even count it. And so one of such crises was part of the things that brought about the, let's call it, the secession of the Opobo people. Yeah, they seceded from Bonny. They went somewhere else and established themselves for peace to reign, you see. And so that was actually how Opobo left. Opobo was established between 1869 and 1870. So if you count the years back, it's just about 150 years thereabout. So it's not a very old community so much. It's a more recent community. And that is when they were established. And the person at the head of the establishment of Opobo was the man known as Jaja. Jaja. See, okay. And so that is just, talking about how they left Bonny. Now, in that crisis that, prompted the Opobo people to leave Ubani, in that crisis, there were two main actors in that crisis. And the two main actors were Okojombo, Chief Okojombo Oponkata. That is his full appellation. Okojombo Oponkata, a very big man in his time. He was actually brought from the hinterland to serve one of those Bonny masters, but as time went on, he continued to go higher and higher in the palm oil trade until he was in charge of more than 600 boys. He had more than 600 boys under him. At that point in time, in the olden days, if you have as much as 600 boys, that is traders, loyal to you, then you are something else. Such people were very hard to control in their time. They were very, very hard to control, because at the point where Okojombo and Jaja, the second principal actor in that crisis or civil war in Bonny, was Jaja. At that point in time, both of them had so much connection. They had so much traders under them. They had so much money. You can imagine that Okojombo had money enough to buy a cannonade. Call it a cannon, a very big cannon, just to fight Jaja. You can imagine where a businessman had money. A businessman in the olden days had enough money to meet the white people and request that he wants a cannon, a giant-sized cannon that he will use to fight, and it was procured for him. You see, so that is how big and powerful Okojombo was in his time. Also, Jaja also was very powerful, though not as powerful as Okojombo was. Now, these were the two principal actors that, they clashed eventually. Both of them clashed, and it was a very serious devastation. And at the end of the day, Jaja evaluated the situation and said, no, I will not go ahead with conflict. I will not go ahead with conflict, because very likely it's either he loses the conflict to Okojombo, or even if he wins, he will lose too much. So there was too much at stake, and so Jaja said, look, we will not continue this fight. And so Jaja took the people who supported him, the Bonny people who supported him, he took all of them and, shifted or migrated to the place known as Opobo today. In Opobo folklore, when they narrate the happenings of that time, when they narrate how Opobo was founded, they will usually tell you that when Jaja came finally and set feet on the land, that the first thing Jaja said was Ejesilem. When you hear Ejesilem, you just know that is an Igbo word. The Opobo people are Igbo, but it's unfortunate that today you have instances where people will come out and try to brainwash you into thinking that they are Ijaw people. Some of the Opobo people who have taken that brainwashing, they identify as Ijaw people today, but they are all Igbo people. They practice Igbo culture, speak the Igbo language, and all that. And so when Jaja came to Opobo, when he landed finally, when the struggle was over, it is usually said among the Opobo people that the first word that Jaja uttered when he stepped foot on Opobo was Ejesilem. Ejesilem, of course, as an Igbo man, it means, my journey is over. My journey has come to an end. You see, and so that's the word he uttered. Until today, there's an Ejesilem group in Opobo. There's a cultural group known as the Ejesilem group, you see. So it's just beautiful like that. So that was how the whole conflict, shaped the movement of people. If you go through other communities in Igbo land, many communities were founded by people living due to conflict. It's just like that. A lot of communities were founded on the backdrop of crisis. There's a clash and people have to leave. They don't want to fight anymore and they just leave. So many communities, too many to mention, in Igbo land were founded by conflict. It's not peculiar to Igbo land anywhere. Back in the olden days, there was a lot of, murdering other people was nothing. Back in the olden days, murdering people was nothing. Once there's an issue, they murder a lot of people, both men, women and children, and it was a very, very tough place to live in. Igbo land of old was a very tough place to live in. And so that is how Opobo was founded, on the backdrop of conflict. Now, it didn't stop there. Some may ask, what was the cause of the conflict? You see, the cause of the conflict between both men, Chief Okojombo and Jaja. The cause of the conflict, as bad as it sounds and as petty as it sounds, the cause of that conflict was just ego. It was just ego of two big men, especially coming from the side of Chief Okojombo. He just felt that Jaja has to understand that he is the bigger man in Bonny. This is why untamed ego can be very dangerous. When your ego is untamed, it can become very dangerous. Chief Okojombo had this feeling that Jaja has to understand that he is, the bigger man. But it was like Jaja wasn't seeing it. Jaja wasn't getting that message. And so at the end of the day, the supporters of both people, they clashed. Very unfortunately. And so that was just the backdrop of the clash, what caused it between both men and both supporters. Now, there is also one name that comes up in the history of the founding of Opobo, is the name Ikom Toro. Ikom Toro. Ikom Toro is the name, or one of the names that river used to be called. That river as Opobo River today, it used to be called Ikom Toro. In some maps, in some older maps, you might see something like Rio Conde. That was the name the Portuguese gave it. It wasn't a popular river anyway, but that was the name the Portuguese gave it, Rio Conde. In other words, the Akwa Ibom people and some of the Andoni people, they called it Ikom Toro. However, officially today, the name of that river is the Imo River, because it's actually the Imo River. It goes all the way into the hinterland. It is actually the Imo River. So along that river, that was where Jaja settled with the people that followed him from Bonny, and he established Opobo. 1869-1870, he established Opobo. You see, but as Opobo, because he didn't stop there, as Opobo continued to grow bigger, because they were very, very good businessmen. The Opobo people were very, very good businessmen. So as the palm oil trade continued to boom, The Opobo people were making a lot of money. And so the Opobo people at one time, they bought the lands opposite the other side of the river. That's the other side of the Imo River. They bought lands there. Those lands today are under the Akwa Ibom state, actually. So you have a situation where Opobo is cut into two states. Most of Opobo is actually in River State, but the remaining part of Opobo is actually in Akwa Ibom. You know, a lot of people don't realize this because the Opobo part, the Akwa Ibom part of Opobo is not well recognized, but Opobo stretches into Akwa Ibom. So that was how Opobo used to be. Opobo continued to expand under the leadership of Jaja. They continued to expand as they continued to do their palm oil business. And so that was how Opobo became one of the leading towns along, that coastal area. Opobo became very powerful. Now, another thing that made Opobo very powerful was that, unfortunately for Bonny, that river, that is the Imo River, that is actually the route the Bonny people take when they want to go to the hinterland. When they want to go and meet their Ndoki brothers in the hinterland, maybe to get palm oil or to get other produce, they usually take that Imo River. But as soon as Jaja and the Opobo people settled on that location along the Imo River, you can say that they blockaded Bonny. Bonny couldn't go up into the hinterland anymore to do business, especially the palm oil business. They couldn't go up anymore, and that caused a lot of bad blood between the Opobo and the Bonny people, because already there was some friction after the war between Jaja of Opobo and Okojombo. That blockading of the river and blocking Bonny people from using that river and going up to Ndoki, it created a very, very serious bad blood between both communities. It created a very serious bad blood, and it made Bonny people, they went almost into starvation, because the way those coastal communities are, if you block them from going to the hinterland to get produce or to get what they need, they will suffer. They will suffer greatly. And that is why most of the time when you hear coastal communities telling you that they will block Igbo people from getting access to the sea and all that rubbish, they are just putting themselves in a trap. Because if the Igbo people also block any channels of getting food or whatever, they will suffer. They will suffer greatly, and that is exactly what happened to Bonny in his time when Opobo was established along the Imo River. Opobo blockaded that river and stopped Bonny from going up into the hinterlands to get food or to get palm oil to do business. And so the Bonny people went hungry. They went hungry. And so these are all the things that happened. All this happened between the years of 1868, 1869 down to 1873. And all this information is captured in one of the books titled West African Studies. West African Studies, published in 1899. It was written by an ethnographer. An ethnographer is somebody who studies ethnic groups, who specializes in, researching ethnic groups. Her name was Mary Henrietta Kingsley. Mary Henrietta Kingsley. The title of the book is West African Studies. It was published in 1899. I'm giving you the book so that you can read at your own leisure. There are more than 30 pages about the history of Bonny and Opobo, especially that Civil War era. There are more than 30 pages. There are a lot of names mentioned, so you can research and you can know the families involved. You can know the chiefs involved. You can even know what was the king's position. The king of Bonny, what was his position on the war. You can know what the British people's position on the clash between Bonny and Opobo was like. You can know their positions. All the details are provided in that book, because the information in the book was captured in the 1880s. That's just about 10 years after the founding of Opobo. The information in that book was recorded about 10 years after the founding of Opobo. So all the information was still fresh as of then. The events were still fresh. Everything that happened were all recorded. I'm saying this for those who may like to read further and get more information. The friction between Bonny and Opobo, the civil war that led to the secession of Opobo, how Jaja handled the issues, how Chief Okojombo handled his own side, How everything went is recorded in that book, West African Studies by Mary Henrietta Kingsley, published in 1899. You can go and read up. See, so this is more or less the first video in a series of videos that we are going to be making about Opobo. This is the first in a series of videos. That is to say that you will still see more videos on Opobo, maybe 2 or 3 videos on Opobo. We are going to be looking very closely at what Opobo is all about. We are going to be looking into their identity crisis today and all that. We are going to be looking into it. So I think I will just tell you that we are going to see on the next video. All right. Thank you very much for listening. Stay well.